Hello Internet, and today's video is going to be another one of those book opinions, those videos in which I tell you my opinion on a book, and today's book is going to be Sovereign by April Daniels. This is the book 2 in the Nemesis series. The first book was Dreadnought. So this book continues along the story of a girl named Dani, and she is a transgender female. So she went through a transition in the first book due to her superpowers, and that first book was really just about the issues of being a transgender person, having to deal with everyone else, how Dani had to come to terms with her own person and loving herself and having to be confident, right? More so than it was about being a hero. It was more about her being a person and her learning how to be a person, with the additive of her also having to deal with superhero powers as well. The second book is more what I was going for when I first picked up the series, and this book follows more along the lines of that superherodom. So I really liked the first book, and although I was surprised by what the story was really about, more so about the issue of having to deal with everyone else when you are a transgender person, and then the additive of being a hero to add interest and intriguing value to it. The second book is more along that superhero nature. So they're both really, really good books, but you need to be aware that they're going to change in the kind of story they tell and their main focus point. So focus point of that first book, more about the LGBTQ community, the issues that you have to deal with there, trying to discover yourself and be confident in yourself, and then you're also a superhero. And the second book is more about being that superhero and the problems you're going to have to deal with on the superherodom. So this starts off with her being a fully recognized hero. She's trying to start a new little league because the old league has been disbanded due to the events of the first book, and she is coming across a lot of issues because she's filled with so much rage after her trying to figure out how to deal with everyone, about her having to deal with her parents and them not respecting her decisions, her having to deal with other people in the world not respecting her decisions, her trying to figure out how to be the best person she can be, but also deal with all of these things that they're throwing at her. Dani gets more involved in her superhero work, but even there, people don't quite like the superhero that she is, and she's having a tough time with that too. So she's overconfident and she's full of rage because it's all this pent up anger that she's had from being stressed out and all these other things, and she ends up finding out about this super secret organization, and so we get to involved in this organization she has to defeat. And this one is a lot more of how Dani's gonna figure out how to be a hero. So the previous book, again, it was focused on Dani being a girl, Dani figuring out who she was, and this book, Sovereign, is about Dani figuring out how to be Dreadnought, right? She has to figure out how to be this hero, how to save the day, how to live with disappointing others because sometimes you can't save everyone, and how to get that respect as a hero and get that respect from others and for others, and just be an upstanding citizen and being that role model that everybody looks for you and being someone that people respect, right? Because she's new on the scene, she's the first woman to ever take on this mantle. Never mind that she's also a transgender woman, so that comes with more issues of what people want to say. So it's all this stuff where she's just dealing with the superhero side of being this superhero Dreadnought, being this amazing person, and having to deal with everyone having to say something about it. I really did like this book. I think I preferred it more because it still had those issues of having to deal with society and that sort of stuff, but it really did have that superhero esque quantity to it that I was really looking for originally when I came to have this book. So I was happy to read this one and seeing more of that superhero, supervillain build to it. I think it was rushed a little bit in the first one, simply because we were trying to get through all of the issues of Dani as a person, which were really important, but they didn't leave a lot left for the supervillain aspect of it. So this book, the supervillain is felt a little bit better from the beginning throughout to the end, rather than it just being like the end piece. Like in the first book, it felt a little more like here's the end boss. In this one, it was a stair up. Like it was like you start at the beginning and you slowly progress to that final battle. So we see a lot more action, we see a lot more heroes, we see a lot more superpowers, and I like the superpowers in this book. I thought it was a really inventive way for some of these powers. I'm very familiar with superhero powers. I've read tons of superhero books, but I did like April Daniels' take on a lot of them. I liked how she kind of mixed and blended them a little bit better to kind of give a new take on these powers that we've seen before. So I really loved that. Overall, I think it was a good book. I think it was a good sequel to the first book. I do think they have very different stories to tell and very different focus points of what they're trying to tell about Dani and her life, but I think they're equally important and they go together very well. Like, you take the time to learn about Dani as a person, her feelings, her emotions when it comes to her just figuring out who she is in the first book, and then we learn more about Dani in this second book of the struggles and how you have to deal with being a superhero, and especially a new one with a mantle that is so old and so profound. So I really like that. I think my favorite character in this book actually isn't Dani, but is this girl that she becomes friends with, is the girl named Calamity. She's a Latin cowgirl, superhero, super soldier girl, and I really love her. I just love how badass she is, and I like all of the side characters that are added into Dani's story, because these side characters also have personalities, so it really adds to the story rather than it just be, oh, here's Dani's story and here's what's going on with Dani. But we also get really intriguing characters who also have a little bit of issues that we see mentioned and struggles of their own that are outside of the main character, which really gives them some feel to them other than just everything being related to the main character. We kind of feel like there's a world outside of her, so we get to experience a little bit of that through these other characters, and that was really good. I like when we have side characters that I can care about, right, rather than them just being fixtures for the main character in some sort of way. So I would suggest this book to anybody who is interested in LGBTQ books, to anyone who wants a book about a transgender female, and to anyone who really loves superhero books. I think that this does really well with the superhero aspect, more so with the second book than the first book. It does really well with handling with LGBTQ ideas and issues, and how to deal with them, whether you are that person or whether you're not that person that directly affects. And I like how it all works out together. I like the kind of difference between the first book and the second book, and I think that if you don't like the first book, you'll definitely like the second book, and if you don't like the second book, you'll definitely like the first book. I think it's like a well-rounded story that just gives you a full encompassing view of what it would be like to be a person, but also to be a superhero, and sort of the issues that you're going to have to deal with in both sides of your life, right? And that sort of idea. So I definitely think that this is worth it. I think I'm going to wait for the third book, if there's going to be a third book. I think these are beautiful covers, so that is like an A+ for me. And that's all I gotta say. So if you've read these books, comment down below and let me know. Also, I would like to know how many of you guys actually like superhero books. I've heard more and more recently, more from like the mainstream sort of people who don't traditionally like superhero things, that they're getting really tired of the superhero era that we're having today. I personally love superheroes, and I am a superhero comic book kind of nerd, so I really enjoy these sort of things. But I'm curious, how many of you are also that same mindset like me, where you will take any superhero thing as long as they're still producing superhero things and people with powers? Or are you more along those lines where you weren't invested in this superhero thing to begin with, and now you kind of want it to peter down so you can get into another era of entertainment? I don't know. I'm curious, which one are you? And if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue seeing more, click all those bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.